Julia Quinn's Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. Colin's back. Penelope looked up from her book, A Brief History of Greece, to see Eloise Bridgerton bursting into her room. As usual, Eloise had not been announced. The Featherington butler was so used to seeing her there that he treated her like a member of the family. Is he? Penelope asked, managing to feign rather realistic indifference. Of course, she did set a brief history of Greece down behind Matilda, the novel by S.R. Fielding that had been all the rage a year earlier. Everyone had a copy of Matilda on their bedstand, and it was thick enough to hide a brief history of Greece. Eloise sat down in Penelope's desk chair. Indeed, and he's very tanned all the time in the sun. I suppose he went to Greece, didn't he? Eloise shook her head. He said the war there was worsened, and it was too dangerous. So he went to Cyprus instead. My, Penelope said with a smile. Lady Whistledown got something wrong? Eloise smiled a cheeky Bridgerton smile, and once again Penelope realized how lucky she was to have her as her closest friend. She and Eloise had been inseparable since the age of 17. They've had their London season together, reached adulthood together, and much to their mother's dismay, had become spinster together. Eloise claimed that she didn't met the right person. Penelope, of course, hadn't been asked. Did he enjoy Cyprus? Penelope inquired. Eloise sighed. He said it was brilliant. How I should love to travel. It seems everyone has been somewhere but me. And me? Penelope reminded her. And you, Eloise agreed. Thank goodness for you. Eloise, Penelope exclaimed, throwing a pillow at her. But she thanked goodness for Eloise too. Every day, many women went through their entire lives without a close female friend, and here she had someone to whom she could tell anything. Well, almost anything. Penelope had never told her of her feelings for Colin, although she rather thought Eloise suspected the truth. Eloise was far too tactful to mention it, though which only validated Penelope's certainty that Colin would never love her. If Eloise had thought for every one moment that Penelope actually had a chance at snaring Colin as a husband, she would have been plotting her matchmaking strategies with a ruthlessness that would have impressed any army general. When it came right down to it, Eloise was a rather managing sort of person. And then he said that the water was so choppy that he actually cast up his account over the side of the boat, and Eloise scowled. You're not you're not listening to me? No, Penelope admitted. Well, yes, actually, parts of it. I cannot believe Colin actually told you he vomited. Well, I'm his sister. He would be furious with you if he knew you told me. Alois waved off her protest. He won't mind. You're like another sister to him. Penelope smiled, but she sighed at the same time. Mother asked him, of course, whether he was planning to remain in town for the season. Alois continued, and of course he was terribly evasive, but then I decided to interrogate him myself. Terribly smart of you, Penelope murmured. Alois threw the pillow back at her and finally got him admit to me that, yes, he thinks he will stay for at least a few months. But he made me promise not to tell mother. No, that's not. Penelope cleared her throat. Terribly intelligent of him. If your mother thinks his time here is limited, she will redouble her efforts to see him married. I should think that was what he wanted most to avoid. It does seem his usual aim in life, Alois concurred. If he lulled her into thinking that there was no rush, perhaps she might not badger him quite so much. An interesting idea, Alois said, but probably more true in theory than in practice. My mother is so determined to see him wed that it matters not if she increases her efforts. Her regular efforts are enough to drive him mad as it is. Can one go doubly mad? Penelope mused. Eloise cocked her head. I don't know, she said. I don't think I should want to find out. They both fell silent for a moment. It was a rare occurrence, indeed. And then Eloise quite suddenly jumped to her feet and said, I must go. Penelope smiled. People who didn't know Eloise very well thought she had a habit of changing the subject frequently and abruptly. But Penelope knew that the truth was something else altogether. When Eloise had her mind set on something, she was completely unable to let it go. Which meant that if Eloise suddenly wanted to leave, it probably had to do with something they had been talking about earlier in the afternoon. And Colin is expected for tea, Eloise explained. Penelope smiled. She loved being right. You should come, Eloise said. Penelope shook her head. He will want it to be Chess family. You're probably right, Eloise said, nodding slightly. Very well, then I must be off. Terribly sorry to cut my visit so short, but I wanted to be sure that you knew Colin was home. Whistle down, Penelope reminded her. Right. Where does that woman get her information? Eloise said, shaking her head in wonder. I vow sometimes she knows so much about my family. I wonder if I ought to be frightened. She can't go on forever, Penelope commented, getting up to see her friend out. Someone will eventually figure out who she is, don't you think? I don't know. Eloise put her hand on the doorknob, twisted and pulled. I used to think so, but it's been 10 years. More actually. If she were going to be caught, I think it would have happened already. Penelope followed Eloise down the stairs. Eventually, she'll make a mistake. She has to. She's only human. Eloise laughed. And here I thought she was a minor god. Penelope found herself grinning. Eloise stopped and whirled around so suddenly that Penelope crashed right into her nearly, sending both of them tumbling down the last few steps on the staircase. Do you know what? Eloise demanded. I couldn't begin to speculate. Eloise didn't even bother to pull her face. I'd wager that she has made a mistake, she said. I beg your pardon? You said it yourself. She, or it could be he, I suppose, has been writing the column for over a decade. No one could do that for so long without making a mistake. Do you know what I think? Penelope just spread her hands in an impatient gesture. I think the problem is that rest of us are too stupid to notice our mistakes. People started at her for a moment, then burst out laughing. Oh, Eloise, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. I do love you. Eloise grinned. And it's a good thing you do, spinster that I am. We shall have to set up a household together when we are 30 and truly crowns. Penelope caught hold of the idea like a lifeboat. Do you think we could? She exclaimed, and then, in a hushed voice, after looking furtively up and down the hall, Mother has begun to speak of her old age with alarming frequency. What's so alarming about that? I am in all of her visions, waiting on her hand and food. Oh dear, a milder expletive than had crossed my mind. Penelope, well, Eloise was screaming. I love my mother, Penelope said. I know you do, Eloise said in a rather placating sort of voice. No, I really do. The left corner of Ella's mouth began to twitch. I know you really do, really? It's just that Eloise put up a hand. You don't need to say any more. I understand perfectly. Oh God, oh, Good day, Mrs. Featherington. Alois, Portia said, bustling down the hall. I didn't realize you were here. I'm sneaky as always, Alois said. Cheeky when Portia gave her an indulgent smile. I heard you. I heard your brother is back in town. Yes, we're all overjoyed. I'm sure you must be, especially your mother. Indeed, she's beside herself. I believe she's drawing up a list right now. Portia enters aspect perked up as it did at the mention of anything that might be constructed as gossip. A list? What sort of list? Oh, the same list she has made for all of her adult children, prospective spouse, and all that. It makes me wonder, Penelope said in a dry voice. What constitutes all that? Sometimes she includes one or two people who are hopelessly unsuitable so as to highlight the qualities of the real possibilities. Portia laughed. Perhaps she will put you on Colin's list, Penelope. Penelope didn't laugh. Neither did Eloise. Portia didn't seem to notice. Well, I'd best be off, Eloise said, clearing her throat to cover a moment that was awkward to two of the three people in the hall. Colin is expected for tea. Mother wants the entire family in attendance. Will you all fit? Penelope asked. Lady Bridgerton's home was large, but the Bridgerton children, spouse, and grandchildren numbered 21. It was a large brood indeed. We're going to Bridgerton House, Lois explained. Her mother had moved out of the Bridgerton's official London residence after her eldest son had married. Anthony, who had been Viscount since the age of 18, had told Violet that she needn't go, but she had insisted that he and his wife needed their privacy. As a result, Anthony and Kay lived with their three children in Bridgerton House, while Violet lived with her unmarried children, with the exception of Colin, who kept his own lodgings just a few blocks away at 5 Bruton Street. Oh. After a year or so of unsuccessful attempts to name Lady Bridgerton's new home, the family had taken to calling it simply Number 5. Do enjoy yourself, Portia said. I must go and find Felicity. We are late for an appointment at the modist. Eloise watched Portia disappear up the stairs and said to Penelope, Your sister seemed to spend a great deal of time at the modist. Penelope shrugged. Felicity is going mad with all the fittings. She's mother's only hope for a truly grand match. I'm afraid she's convinced that Felicity will catch a duke if she's wearing the right gown. Isn't she practically engaged to Mr. Albansdale? I imagine he'll make a formal offer next week. But until then, mother is keeping her options open. She rolled her eyes. You'd best warn your brother to keep his distance. Gregory? Eloise asked in disbelief. He's not even out of university. Colin. Eloise exploded with laughter. Colin? Oh, that's rich. That's what I told her. But you know how she's once gets an idea in her head. Eloise chuckled. Rather like me, I imagine. Tenacious to the end. Tenacity can be a very good thing, Eloise reminded her. At the proper time. Right, Penelope returned with a sarcastic smile. And at the improper time, it's an absolute nightmare. Eloise laughed. Cheer up, friend. At least she let you rid yourself of all those yellow frogs. Penelope looked down at her morning dress, which was, if she did say so herself, a rather flattering shade of blue. She stopped choosing my clothing once she finally realized I was officially on the shelf. A girl with no marriage prospects isn't worth the time and energy it takes her off to offer fashion advice. She hasn't accompanied me to the modesty in over a year. Bliss.
Eloise smiled at her friend, whose complexion turned the loveliest peaches and cream whenever she wore cooler hues. It was apparent to all, the moment you were allowed to choose your own clothing. Even Lady Whistledown commented upon it. I hate that column from Mother, Penelope admitted. I didn't want her feelings to be hurt. Eloise blinked a few times before saying, that was very kind of you, Penelope. I have my moments of charity and grace. One would think, Eloise said with a snort, that a vital component of charity and grace is the ability not to draw attention to one's possession of them. Penelope pursued. Penelope pursed her lips as she pushed Eloise towards the door. Don't you need to go home? I'm leaving. And she left. So it was Colin. Bridgerton decided as he took a sip of some truly excellent brandy. Rather nice to be back in England. No, no, no. Do you guys want to know what happened to Colin Bridgerton, as he's not even yet introduced in our story? But these ladies are giving a much given hype to Colin. So thank you so much to all the listeners of my story. So if you want to find out what is happening between Penelope and Colin, subscribe to my channel and be always ready to get the new stories. Until then, thank you.